Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition, and this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And today we are celebrating the birthday of Ed the Pagan, and if you follow my work, you for any length of time, you know who Ed the Pagan is. He's been a frequent guest on my program, and my partner in all sorts of different projects for some 35 years now. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments onto whatever platform you're watching on, and they will show up here in my chat room. And as you can see, even before we went on today, we had a lovely comment from Foxfire Witch. I beg your pardon, from Foxfur Witch. And thank you, Foxfur Witch. She says, um, good day, Lord Don, and happy birthday, Ed. I hope it's filled with love and it's a joyful day. And I totally concur with that. And Foxfur Witch then says, I ran over here while I had time. I'm very excited to let you know that thanks to your showing Equinox Learning Hub, we're switching from cyber school to their curriculum when this school year is over. And thank you for sharing them. They're amazing, and I can't wait for my kids to get started. And that's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm sure that you're going to be very happy with their program. And this is part of why I do this, to help people find better ways of doing things, help them find the resources that will help them to build that better world they want to be part of. And that's really been what I've been trying to do most of my life. And for most of my life, Ed the Pagan has been my partner in this. Um, 25 years ago, 24 years ago, we founded Witch School along with Lisa Tuitt for this same purpose, to help people to get instruction in the Wiccan religion and metaphysics in general that many people were finding it difficult to obtain at that time because either they were geographically isolated or they simply could not find resources in their area. And Edward had the very revolutionary idea of doing this online. No one previously had done it. It's not especially uncommon today, but at the time, it was not only a very new idea, it was quite iconoclastic. And that is something that's very typical of Ed the Pagan. Um, for 35 years, more or less, the person I most often, or one of the people I've most often turned to for advice is Ed the Pagan. And hello to Vivian P. in the chat room, who's joining us from Missouri. And iconoclastic is one way to describe the way he looks at things. Um, Edward has been a bit of a modern day Cassandra. He is extremely insightful about what's going to happen, very accurate about predicting it, and most often no one will listen to it. It's amazing. And also, even when people do listen, it often seems like they find themselves unable to do what's needed, which is a very interesting phenomenon. Hello to Renee in the chat room. And I hope that period has ended. But I want to talk a little bit about that, and Witch School is a perfect example. People were variously horrified and deeply upset with the idea of Witch School when it started. And hello to Unique One in the chat room. And, it turned out to be such a help to so many people. And to look back at how people reacted to it at the time, some people who laughed at it and mocked the idea then went on to start their own online schools and claimed to have come up with the idea themselves. It's not an uncommon thing to see, in my experience, that things that Edward will warn about and see that are coming, no one else can seem to see. And I think one of the reasons for that Obviously, since today is his birthday, he's an Aquarius, and he tends to see things very differently than other people see them. And he tends to not see the illusions that a lot of people hold. Um, the way I used to put it is he loves to barbecue sacred cows. And a lot of people don't like to change their assumptions. They like to assume that an idea that they like must be right because they like it or because they've accepted it, and the idea that they might be wrong is inconceivable, even if it's demonstrated to them again and again that their idea is not working. And I have seen this time and time again in the pagan community. Um, and I'm sure it's true in all communities. I think it's human nature, but still, people have a very hard time reconsidering their positions. And I think that's a terrible character flaw that can be really damaging to people. I personally want to know if I'm wrong, and I want to be able to reassess what I'm doing and find a better way to do it. But I found a lot of people who would rather go down with the wrong idea than change to a better one. And I've seen that a lot with things that Edward has advised over the years. I learned a lot in particular through his involvement with the Parliament of the World's Religions. And in terms of what causes a religious movement to be taken seriously in the world, what causes a religious movement to be able to have a seat at the table with other religions. And almost all of the things that will get you a seat at that table, the wider part of the pagan community just will not do. And then they wonder why they don't have a seat when it's laid out for them. I made it a point, while I was Chancellor of the Karelian tradition, to do those things. And we got a pretty good seat at that table. And I watched others banging their head on the wall, not really knowing what to do. And there were some others who found their way there too, in other ways. But it really did require a rethinking of certain things. And that question, which I often speak of, choosing to do what's going to work, as opposed to what you like. And hello to Magical Mermaid in the chat room. And when I talk about leadership on this program, and I often do, that's often the point I come back to. And a lot of this was informed through my relationship with Edward, as well as other people. But, one of the best things that he ever really, no, I'd have to say taught me, was that you haven't done something until you've done it. I'm an artist, I'm a writer, and when I was younger, I was much more of a perfectionist. The result of which is I had many unfinished projects because they were never perfect. But I learned from Edward that, it's not done if no one else can see it. It might as well not exist. You have not written a book if you haven't written the last page, and if people cannot see it. You have a partly written book. You haven't finished an artwork if nobody can ever see it. You're just working on it. And this is true also in running an organization, in any aspect of life. It doesn't matter how perfect you can think of it in your mind. It matters how you can manifest it in the world. And this is something that was really emphasized to me through my relationship with Edward. And I think that that's a very important thing for me that I have taken away from that relationship. And the other thing that I want to talk about, more importantly today, all through last year, I was talking about Project 2025. I've been talking about it a lot this year as it's going into practice. And I frequently referred to the fact that both Ed the Pagan and I, but first and foremost he, has been talking about that for 30 years, longer than 30 years. Because he was raised in an evangelical household and originally trained to be an evangelical minister, he knew all about this. This was not a secret in those circles. It was a long-term plan. Because he knew about it, I knew about it. Because he knew about it, the Correllian tradition knew about it. At least to the extent that individuals were willing to listen to us tell them about it. So I'm not surprised by what I'm seeing happening today. But I see so many others who are. But there's no reason for them to be, because he was telling everyone, but they would not listen. All last year, people in the pagan community were saying, this is nonsense. There's nothing to worry about. This is just fear mongering. It was not. It was absolutely accurate. And it's kind of like the existence of pre-Gardnerian Wicca. If the evidence that's there is not enough to convince you, it's because you are not willing to be convinced. If you've read the works of, I believe it's Heselton, you will know what I'm talking about in part. But with Project 2025, if you don't realize at this point that it was not fear mongering, but a very accurate prediction, you must not be watching the news. And if you were listening to Edward, you would know about this. And speaking of Edward, here he is.
Sorry, I
Hi,
got
Ed.
caught on doing the coffee pusher thing.
Well, that's true. Starbucks is honoring your birthday today with free coffee, I believe, if
Hmm.
you belong to
They are.
Starbucks Rewards. So if you belong to the Starbucks Rewards program, you should go out and get your free Ed the Pagan coffee
Yeah.
and tell them Ed the Pagan sent you, and
Hmm.
enjoy your free coffee pusher coffee. And how are you today, Ed?
I'm good. I mean, it's a solid day. My hair's everywhere. I mean, I'm 62 years old. I'm eligible for Social Security. I'm not taking it, but um, people have been making a lot of commentary, and it's been very, very interesting. Hmm?
Mm-hmm.
What can you say? I mean, it is acknowledgement. My daughter's been, yeah, my family's been treating me really well. My daughter's been treating me well. Of course, I'll get back to work
Yeah,
shortly here.
we have a
I
lovely
feel
daughter.
I do.
You do.
And at one time, she was the youngest Correllian priestess in our history. She was
That's
a,
true.
other than as a legal clergy, other than yourself and Crystal and others of the family, she was the first one to like become initiated. That
Mm-hmm.
most people don't realize my daughter at 8 years old was once accepted into a circle where only high priestesses were allowed to be in for pagan unity night, only them, and they dragged her in. She was the ninth high priestess of that night, and she was like 8 years old, 9 years old.
That's true.
It is true. I mean, so
It
she's
is
been there.
true.
And then when we took her down to New Orleans, she actually, we took her to the Voodoo Museum, and they were like, "You're not supposed to touch, not to touch." And the mother there was like, "Oh no!" My daughter went up and Legba, one of the seated thrones, and actually sat in the lap and started
Yep.
talking to him. And I was like freaking out because, like, oh my god, you're not supposed to do. And he goes, "No, no, no, it's okay, it's okay. I mean, we don't want adults, that sort of thing." And they gave her a reading and things like that. So my daughter's a fairly magical person, but she doesn't practice it, not in the same way
Mm.
we do. She really wanted a much more normal life. She works. She's got a master's degree. She works for a major company. She
Mm-hmm.
has a Boy Scout for a husband, literally an Eagle Scout,
Yep.
um, and
Well,
he's an
she's a
engineer.
magical person, and she manifested the life she wanted.
And she wanted something of a normal American life, considering how crazy her parents were. Um, so that was always something that she liked. Um, but yeah, but also at this time, I guess, um, I guess one of the things, and people can ask me questions, but there is a lot happening, and on this birthday, it is remarkable to me that we're facing a lot of situations that I've been talking about for years. And
Mm-hmm.
now that we're in it, seeing people like all freaking out that what should we do? What should we do? Well, I have a plan in place for what we're going to do, which is Ancestor House.
Mm-hmm.
Elder care for for Don and for others and myself probably in a few years, but also Ancestor House, where we're going to start creating this archival record and spread it. And I'm looking at flash drives. I'm looking at all sorts of different ways to disseminate it. Um, Recently, we made several of the Corellian books into common creatives, meaning you can make a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Steve. Um, and can copy it. And people go, "Why did you do it?" So we can put it on flash drives, so we can take out the interference of it. Because the truth is, while individual Bibles, individual Qurans may be copyrighted, the Quran, the Bible, the Vedics are not copyrighted.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can create their own version of it and share those versions and print them up, and no one's going to stop them. Now, individuals might be copyrighted. Depending on the country, but overall, you don't. No one ever asks is the Quran copyrighted or the Bible copyrighted, and yet virtually everything in the pagan world is copywritten.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a act at one time people don't realize is that they started, like music, even against artists who had the rights to their own music. These copyright agencies for music started to force copyright protection against artists who gave permission to other people and would not let them say, no, 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 you have to go through us.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they own their copyrights, they own the right to distribute them. Jenna Green did that to us.
Mm-hmm.
That she went to CD Baby just to duplicate her thing, and they claimed copyright over it.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved the books into a Creative Commons so that people can never lose them. And I want to bury them. I
Yeah.
want them to go everywhere in the world. That's what we have to do.
Well, I was just talking about how long you've been warning about what is now called Project 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in terms of how to react to it, my attitude tends to be the first person who tells me is the person I'm going to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, my understanding
Mm-hmm.
and my own opinion is that there's not a lot we can do right now. We need to survive, and we
Yes.
need to look to our future and not run around scatterbrained in the present.
Remember, there are a lot of people who said Project 2025 wasn't real. We said it was. And I pointed out that was from the Heritage House, how to elect Christians, how to
Mm-hmm.
replace the judges. This has been systematic. I was there at the beginning. I was raised in a Dominionist church, which means the seven mountains, and now they're accomplishing their last mountain, which is the government. They
Mm-hmm.
are trying to control education, the arts. If you look at what they're doing, is that the Dominionist movement requires you retake all seven of the mountains of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been taking them over systematically. They started with education. People don't remember when they started doing these school boards. They wanted to get people on school boards.
Yep.
So they changed education. They did change education over the last 40 years. They called it dumbification of Americans. Um, and at the same time, you had this we went from a middle class Democratic Party, which was very middle class, very worker oriented, to being like everybody needs a college, to the point where the Democratic Party became the educated class.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and the Republican Party was never anything but the business class. But now they're now in a position of 82% of white men back the Republican Party now. And over 40% of black men are now supporting the Republican Party. So the Democratic parties have kind of lost. So what? None of this matters to us. We're not Democrats. We're not Republicans. We're pagans. And what are we going to do to preserve our story into the future? And that's the real question. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, all that's left to me is the preservation of archives. You should be preserving your archives, starting to bury them down, so that when this wave comes over us, we can then recover and restore. Remember, the best type of censorship isn't the burning of a book, but getting it from not being read.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care if you publish the book, just as long as it's not read. Hmm?
Yeah.
I saw in one of the scanners about Danville. Danville supposedly is having their library stripped.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't gone to it, but I've seen that now in some of the lists around Danville.
There seems to be a war on libraries across the country,
Of course, because
which, yeah.
yeah,
Well, the Christian nationalists don't want knowledge that disagrees with them to be easily available.
Mm-mm.
So making every effort to preserve our knowledge in order to keep it available and make it available again is going
Mm-hmm.
to be very, very important because we can't assume the libraries are going to do it.
No, obviously they're not. And why should they? I mean, at some level, the problem with it is that a lot of pagans have not been very civil minded. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
ask me what is really wrong with some of the situations, right, is
Mm-hmm.
that they're not civil minded. They've never really gone out and said, "Hey, we should be, hmm that we should be, we should be doing more things publicly." Now, people like Byron Ballard, there have been others go out and say we should be working with within the context. But then you got people, a lot of the elders, and go out and said, "Oh, we should now in crisis." Like there's this big letter written by 90 elders, and they're continuing to add to it that we should go and work our alliances with the Christian churches that are being punished. We have been doing that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're ignoring it. Hmm?
Yeah.
And they've been ignoring it. It's called the Parliament of World's Religions, Interfaith
Mm-hmm.
Council, EOIC. We've been working with it. I've gone to every parliament because
Yeah.
I want to build these allies. We need the moral aspects. But now they're like, oh, we're all under attack. Hmm? And
Well, yeah,
now we
but
need to do
before the attack, they mostly couldn't be bothered.
mm-mm.
Hello to Steve Taylor in the chat room.
Yeah, so that's really it. But I'm really glad to have the birthday. I mean, it's giving me a lot of perspective. I can't do what
Well,
I
it's
used to
always
do.
nice to have another birthday.
No, it always is. It is. And I'm only 62.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the middle of 25. I'm in the beginnings of a 25-year project because I believe in 25-year projects. Everybody who has ever known me knows I do not. I work in deep futures. I never have worked in the immediate. Everything was immediate. What was the? I took the old Tony Robbins famous statements. We overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't even imagine what we can do in a lifetime. I mean, look at what we did. I was able to help structure the largest Wiccan tradition in the world. Still is. Hmm?
Mm-hmm.
We have more registered priests than anyone else. We have more third degrees than anyone else. And because we did something that I was told absolutely by people who are now doing it that we couldn't do, which was bring it online and break down some of these barriers. During COVID, when everybody was scrambling to fix the things, we were already
Mm-hmm.
on Zoom.
Yes.
We were able to step in and solve the problem. We saved several. We helped out
Mm-hmm.
with over 14 or 15, and they went on to do their own thing. The origins of WitchCon, which is run by Christian Days, seeped into that moment. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've advised a lot of people, and I don't take a lot of credit for what I do, and I think that's really hard for people. I think more people would like to have me take more credit, and maybe I should.
Mm-hmm.
But we saved, some of the big festivals. We also, began this sort of online teaching. Things that are people are doing today and the other traditions, we don't do anymore because we've already kind of outgrown it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have tons of archives and we're going to do it. But right now, being an archivist, getting Ancestor House there, a physical place where people can go to, and also a place where we can store records and build Faraday cages. And really, are we going to protect ourselves? Are we going to cry if we actually end up in a Fahrenheit 451 situation where people are actually coming down to hunt these books down? Now, Heinlein talked about it. I mean, this has
Mm-hmm.
been prophesized, and it is within Project 2025 to shut down. When are they going to order Llewellyn shut down, or somebody going to come in and try to buy out Llewellyn? You
What
know,
people don't realize that if an unfriendly force were to buy out Llewellyn, a great deal of pagan literature would
mm.
simply cease to exist in terms of publication.
And remember, they have the money to do so. I mean, it depends on the
Mm-hmm.
family and who's
Mm-hmm.
doing it, right? But they are spending $1 billion on a campaign right now. The Christian Dominion is called "He Gets Us."
Mm-hmm.
And this is supposed to make it feel, and it's a victimization. It's purely like, oh, we're victimized and everything else, but Jesus gets us. So it's a relief system.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm? So it's a relief system. Um,
I think one of the things
and
people don't realize is how much money is being directed into these efforts
hmm
and why money is important. And you still run
yeah.
into pagans who are horrified every time the word money is mentioned and then wonder why they're powerless in terms of this political wave. But
Oh, sure.
I mean, it's a very hard thing to have any real reaction to, even for the better financed organizations, because by comparison, none of us is well financed.
Lady Liberty League should be better financed than it
Yeah.
is. We should all be backing because they've had real successes.
Hmm.
They should have been more prepared for this. They're not. I mean, they've got some preparation. They got
Hmm.
people, but if you have to do fundraising to be in a
Hmm.
fight, then you don't understand it. Red Cross. Everybody goes, "Oh, Red Cross, we're donating so much money to Red Cross for this disaster." No, you're just donating against the next disaster. They're just using this disaster because they already got the funds set
Hmm.
aside for the disaster that's happening right now. We don't have the money for the disaster that happens right now. Patrick McCollum with his prisons had to do it at the time. Veterans had to raise money simultaneously and depend on ACLU and Church for Separation of State. We don't have these reserves. It's one of the reasons why I think that Ancestor House, more importantly, Gaia Thrift. Gaia Thrift is an answer. Gaia Thrift is a billion-dollar industry. In a billion-dollar industry. We're throwing away so many clothing. Now with the tariffs going into place, it looks pretty that you're going to see clothes prices go up. So you need to preserve your clothes better. Yeah, we do it. When I get back there, we have lots of things. That are going to be put out. Jackets, coats, and everything else, and it preserves that value in there. I mean, there's a lot of value that's being thrown away. I mean, America is a wasteful country, and there's this thing about anti-poor. We would rather see the groceries get thrown away.
Hmm.
I'm seeing this in dumpster divers shows. They would rather see it thrown away than it is donated to a charity,
Hmm.
donated to the poor. Clothes. The Gap is famous for this. If they're throwing out clothes that have gone out of style or they're writing off, they hack them. They literally tear into them so that they can't be reused. Uh, the big model brands like Louis Vuitton, Hermes, I'm learning why can't they don't like having their stuff sold secondhand. And they will do things to try to prevent it. Some of this you can't list on eBay if it's secondhand. But what do they do with their extra stock? They don't donate it. They burn it. They literally burn it to a crisp so it can't be in the marketplace. So there's constant manipulation of luxury, and this idea that the anti-poor. I have literally heard people. There's a person who dressed very very well, and they are all Don's one of these, but very well. She was very well done, and she was working a minimum wage job, and she eventually would move into thrifting. But what it was is she would wear. How can you have a? Oh no, I don't make that much money. Well, how do you have a propped bag? How do you have all these? Well, I go to secondhand shops. I go to
Hmm.
thrift, and I buy from there.
Yeah.
And she has luxury. She has a luxury outfit. And she eventually said that that is what she eventually got her a receptionist job out of being just kind of her main job. And once she got the receptionist job, people treated her better. She dressed as well as anyone in the office,
Hmm.
and she did through thrifting, and that is anti. So there's two levels of that. And also, there are people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't go in a thrift store to resell." It's a big
Hmm.
industry, huge industry. And they go, "Oh, you're stealing from the poor." So this is that hypocrisy we have in our society that the poor shouldn't dress well from the cast offs of the rich. And at the same time, we shouldn't let ourselves, the cast offs of the rich or the well off and the middle class, should not be available to other people to resell. They should all go to the poor. So it's a hypocrisy. So there's this idea of status.
Hmm.
And that's really a very difficult. Don and I talked about it. We got to thrift. One of the things that Don's doing is curating clothing for
Yes.
people. Check it out. Check it out. Go to Gaia Thrift on CarelianChurch.com, Weebly.com slash Gaia Thrift. You can link into where Don's actually helping people dress better because the better we dress, Don has convinced me this. The better we dress, the better we are treated. And this anti-poor. Like the poor aren't working hard enough; they're not doing anything, and it's a structural problem. So, what does this mean to us? Well, it means that we have to get into that structural problem. People always ask me, why did Danville? Danville is like a terrible city, supposedly. It's got, real poverty problems. It's got a 17.6 unemployment rate for the black community there. One third of them are below the poverty line. We're talking about ghetto owners. People are, raising rents against them. Now they're all freaking out because Section 8 may be taken
Hmm.
away. They're not funded. And a lot of these people who are, ghetto, who hold and I'm calling it a ghetto for a
Hmm.
reason. This is not an accidental slip of the tongue. Versus low cost neighborhoods or bad neighborhoods, are basically working on Section 8 and they don't do the repairs. And these people are bad people. That's what we're saying. Now, if they lose Section 8, what happens there?
Hmm.
It could be as much as 10,000 people, a third of the town, could lose their housing.
Yeah.
Hmm? And now, and considering it's a kind of a red town, I mean, it's terrible. So that's where we have to do where we can have an impact. Why Gaia Thrift can have an impact. We can sell clothes. We have dollar bins and all sorts of different ideas of helping the people who can't afford much to also then selling some of the better goods that we have
Hmm.
to online. I mean, we have an eBay account that's doing great. I got lots of things there.
Yes.
So we're trying to get that. But we need Gaia Thrift to work in order to have elder care. Not because we can't. We could actually probably fund the entire price of starting up an elder care center. It would take all my time and all the energy and go knocking on doors, but we can probably do it. And I will be doing that. But we can't get loans. We can't get delayed billings. We can't get 30-day billings without a revenue
Yep.
source. And everybody thinks that revenue source should come from the people being attended. And that's really where the mistake is. We need an outside revenue source that we can prove, oh, yeah, this is the revenue going into it. So that's why Gaia Thrift is so important. And how we're going to support Ancestor House? I put it up in the links, but right now you can begin the process of helping us, and it'll be through subscriptions.
Hmm.
We found out pagans. One thing I have learned over the last 25 years, pagans do like
Yes.
subscriptions. They prefer subscriptions to any other form of fundraising.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I know we're coming down to the bottom of the hour and actually even past
Well,
it.
we are
Not that
slightly
I care.
past it, but we have no show coming on after us, so we can go on if we want.
Well, what else is there to talk about? I mean, so one of the things I think I have, so a lot of people have taken my reputation, and all rumors about me are true, regardless of the
Yep.
facts. I haven't had fan fiction, like I equate to Star Trek. You know how Star Trek has all those really weird stories. Yeah, somebody's talking about Vivian's talking about what's happening. Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, Vivian says a friend of mine was on Section 8. She stayed 12 days after her contract was up. The apartment was supposed to prorate that month. Now he's getting sued for 3 times the rent, miscellaneous stuff, court costs, etc. And he's on disability. And yeah, the level of abuse is very high, and only going to get higher
Hmm.
because the powers that be are supporting it at this point.
And this is why we need our own elder care. Now, I started the elder care long before this. Now, people ask me, well, what prediction have you made? Well, in 2016, I said the Cubs would win
Yeah,
the series. They did.
and that was
Um,
apocalyptic.
yeah,
Everyone said the Cubs
that's
win the
actually
series, the world will end, and it kind of did.
yeah. I said Trump was going to beat Hillary
Hmm.
weeks before anyone else was saying it. That Russia was inside, which we found out is true. People forget how much the Russians were inside the
Yeah.
government. What Elon Musk is doing now, the Russians were already inside, kind of playing around with it, and it's very important. And world
Hmm.
conqueror. And now we're seeing that behavior. So that was just one of them. I've made a lot of tactical. I'm a
Hmm.
strategist. I mean, we're ready to actually. I've made a deal with another company to called back up
Hmm.
everything, and we have now a system in place that's going into place that can back up everything from everyone that they want to be back up. And I think we're going to need to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, At this point, I'm gonna let the fighters come to the fighters, and the last minute people come to the fight. And my job now is to preserve for the next generation. I'm now looking at Gen B. How we're going to protect them? How we're going to get them to their place? I'm saying we're going to go through hell. I mean, this isn't just a four. People think this is a 4-year change. No, this is a radical shift of the American system that will last an entire generation.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going back. This is not going back. There's no way to go back. There's never a way to go back.
Yeah.
Once we fought World War II, there was no going back to the time before World War One.
Well, not until now.
The Korean War. No, there's no way of going back. And even if they do, it's
No,
not back.
it's not. It's just replicated.
It's a new fascism. It's a new type of.
Yeah.
It's corporatism. I mean, I just like to call it fascism because they want to fight the last fight. This isn't fascism. This is corporate feudalism. It's a very different thing. It's Christian based, but it's still feudalism. They're not trying to turn us back into a slave culture. They're trying to change us back into a feudalistic culture. And what do I mean by that? It means, what do I mean by that? Well, simply that. They're trying to make overlords, people who are very rich, handling the money and things like that, and having these huge estates, and everybody kind of serves them in their factories and their places. But they're not slaves per se.
No, they're serfs.
But they're serfs. They have to give up a great deal of the money that they're making. So we're not being turned into slaves.
No.
Some of us are, but we are being turned into serfs. And then we're very much returning to the age of corporate kings. In fact, Elon Musk, who everybody complains, is a techno king. He's registered in the United States government as a techno king. Now he's talking about being the techno king of the United States. He's able now to go. He's gone into South Africa. He's gotten them cut off because he's mad at them, so that he can take over that country. He's in Germany. I mean, he's Genghis Khan of the modern technological age. Alexander the Great of the technological age.
Oh, and hello to Wendy in the chat room. And Wendy says, my daughter became my caregiver a few weeks ago. Which is very...
Is she getting paid by the government? Or a program?
She doesn't say. But,
yeah. Yeah.
And hello to Daniel in the chat room.
Go ahead.
So I want to take a moment for a word from our sponsors. We started out our program with an endorsement of our sponsors from Fox Fur Witch, who is transferring her children's education to Equinox Learning Hub because of our promotion of them, and I'm very gratified to hear that. So let us take a moment, because we love our sponsors, to hear from our sponsors. Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours. And thank you to our sponsors, Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, and Equinox Learning Hub. And Wendy has answered the question. Her daughter is being paid by Medicaid to be her caregiver. And yeah, I don't know if we have any idea what's going to happen with that.
And which is why we get back to our elder care being, well, we can use government money when we get it. We must presume that we will never see a cent of government money.
That does appear to be a likely thing coming.
right? At least for a number of
Hmm.
years. And yes, everybody says, "Oh, the Democrats are going to sweep in." Let me make your prediction right now. There is no way the Democrats can sweep in and change the House and the Senate in this next election. It's not going to happen. In fact, I'm going to tell you, we're going to get more solidly Republican. This is what happened in Germany. This happened in Cambodia. This has happened in Russia. When the Soviet Union fell, they became this sort of democracy, and they became this sort of kleptocracy. We saw it in Hungary. We see it over and over again in the way this falls. And the fact is, it does make life easier. Let me tell you, once you accept, this sort of fascism, this sort of neo feudalism, it gets
As
easier.
long as you're as
It
long
gets
as you're in
easier.
the right group.
Well, even if you're in the wrong group, it gets easier. You just know, then you get to play the victim and cry all the time and do nothing. It's only people who want to change the system that it's bad
Yeah.
for. It's only for the people who want to improve other people. If you're willing to be a victim, you're willing to, do everything else. Hmm?
And Daniel says, I hope this doesn't affect the rehab model for those who check into rehabs paid by Medicaid. I'm that almost,
Already
yeah.
has.
And unfortunately, I
Hmm.
think that will certainly be the case. But this is
But
why
I
we
thank
need
you,
to be
everybody, on my
building our own
birthday.
infrastructures.
And that's, and local. I think that one of the things I keep hearing is we need to ground local, 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 local. And everybody knows I'm the most international pagan out there. I am. I mean, I'm known all over the world, but now that I'm going local, it's been a much tougher job to get people to respect the local. But I'm a strategist, and I feel like I'm one of the best strategists in our community.
Mhm.
And so, yes, remember what you need to do.
I've always felt that. And, for years we've been talking about the need for infrastructure. Now we see it very clearly. But we're well
Hmm.
ahead of some other groups in having and building infrastructure. We have our plans underway.
Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, if you want these sort of rehab centers, figure out how we're going to finance them. Figure out what we're going to do. Because truth is that under these sort of feudalism, slaves slash that, drugs go up. I mean,
Hmm.
Russia, what was the number one drug for years? Vodka.
Yep,
I mean, the government's to the point where they were subsidizing vodka. Drunks, people who are constantly drunk, I mean, really drunk, can't fight
that's
back.
true.
Remember, comfort is both the ally and the enemy of making change. Why will not people stand up to anything? Because they're comfort and they're afraid to lose the comfort that they had.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's a great place to leave. Thank you, everybody, for the birthday wishes. I want you to just, please, um, one of the things I'm asking you to do is join whatnot.com. We're going to be doing, me and Don were just talking about, we're going to do another metaphysical auction here really
Yes,
shortly.
indeed. We're going to have some really remarkable things for you.
Yep. And so,
So,
there
with
we go.
that, thank you, Edward. And let
Hmm.
us close with our prayer, as we always do.
Hmm.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to be prepared for the things that are coming in our future through clairvoyant messages, through wisdom, through everything that you can use to help us to be prepared and to make practical and logical decisions for how to respond and how to survive and how to thrive, even in less than ideal situations. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love. Knowing you're always with us, we thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always. And Edward, thank you for joining us. And everyone else, thank you for joining us. And may you be blessed now and always.